So who the hell expected February 11th, 2025 to be such a significant day in IndyCar? But here we are. We're sitting here. We're about to talk about a huge story in IndyCar, and that is that Jay Frye is no longer the president of IndyCar. That job has now been passed to Doug Boles, who is the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and will retain that role in addition to becoming the president of IndyCar. This is a day that might significantly alter the path of IndyCar racing. I think at least the way, I think a lot of us hope that it does. Nothing against Jay. In fact, in this video, we're going to talk about a lot of the great things that Jay Frye and the good that Jay Frye brought to IndyCar and the Indianapolis 500 over his tenure. I think history will likely shine pretty brightly on what Jay Frye was able to accomplish as the president of IndyCar. But as times change, sometimes changes need to be made. And I think this potentially is a change for the better. Let's take a look first, before we get too far into the weeds, at the release that IndyCar put out today. And I'm going to read not the whole thing, but we're going to kind of get into some of this stuff, because it wasn't just Doug Boles moving into this role. There's a couple of other changes that I think you guys need to know about. Specifically, the quote from Doug: "Racing is in my DNA, and no form of racing resonates more personally and strongly with me than the NTT IndyCar series. I'm honored to lead the amazing team at IndyCar, and I truly believe the future is bigger and brighter than ever for our sport and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm extremely grateful to Mark Miles for this opportunity, and the fans can rest assured hard work is already underway, and 2025 will be a fantastic season." Boles becomes the president of IndyCar as Frye departs the organization following 10 years in the role. During Frye's tenure, he led a period of tremendous success at IndyCar, including securing the entitlement of the series sponsorships with Verizon and NTT, the development of the AK-18 Universal Aero Kit, development and implementation of a total driver cockpit safety solution Aeroscreen, and the state-of-the-art hybrid technology introduction. In addition, Jay Frye also oversaw an expanded grid with incredible competition. It has been an absolute honor and privilege to be the president of IndyCar and work alongside the dedicated and talented men and women at IndyCar and the IndyCar paddock, Frye said. The growth and success of this series has had over the last 10 years would not be possible without the commitment and collaboration of the owners, drivers, and teams. In both his role at IndyCar and as IMS president, Boles will report to Penske Entertainment president and CEO Miles. So to answer that question for anybody who might have had that question, there it is. As Boles manages strategic vision and prioritizes across both IMS and IndyCar, several additional staffing updates will help oversee the day-to-day operations within each organization. Now, this is important. At IndyCar, Mark Sibylla, I believe I said that right, has been named Senior Vice President of IndyCar Competition and Operations. He's been a senior member of IndyCar's management team for more than a decade and will lead the work streams focused on general operations and special initiatives such as development of the new car. Hey, they acknowledge the new car. That's good. Good. Also at IndyCar, Kyle Novak begins an enhanced role as Vice President of Officiating and Race Control. In this position, he will lead both the race control and race tech teams at IndyCar, responsible for ensuring rigorous and equitable enforcement of the NTT IndyCar Series and Indy Next, presented by Firestone, competition regulations. Novak has served as IndyCar race director since the 2018 season and was elected to the FIA General Assembly in 2022. In addition, as IndyCar prepares for new levels of audience exposure through its relationships with Fox Sports, Alex Dameron has been named Chief Marketing Officer, charged with fully implementing a maximized and ununified promotional plan for the sport. In this role, he will lead the marketing and communications teams at IndyCar. He will also continue as the Vice President of Corporate Communications for Penske Entertainment, responsible for overseeing IMS's PR and Penske Entertainment photo and editorial operations. So to put it into the King's English, Alex Dameron is taking over the role that was vacated by S.J. Ludke 2 or 3 years ago at this point. So this is the market. Here's your marketing officer, and Alex has been around for a while. Alex is visible. Most people, kind of in the media and around IndyCar, obviously know who Alex is and what he does. Looking forward to seeing what he does in that role, 100%, because I think it's something that IndyCar has lacked for a while. Obviously, not having a marketing director, it's good that that role has been filled, and we wish, of course, Alex all the success in the world with it. At IMS, Kissinger steps into the role of general manager, IMS operations, leading teams responsible for suite and hospitality sales, track operations, and events operations. Just to say, that's Louis Kissinger. I don't know why they didn't mention his first name, but that's taking over, I would imagine, some of the roles that previously Doug would have been responsible for, but obviously he has bigger fish to fry now. So let's talk about this a little bit, because there's a ton of things that we need to go over here. I guess we'll start first with Jay, because obviously that's kind of the breaking news, right? That Jay Frye is out at IndyCar. So this was something that had come up the Nashville weekend of IndyCar last year, that potentially Jay Frye would be out of a job, which shocked me at the time, for sure. And I would have thought that he would have been one of the last people to lose a job at IndyCar. If you were part of the DL 500 club, you knew that that was a possibility. I brought that up to you guys. But also it kind of felt like as time went on that story was going away and potentially was a nothing burger, potentially was something that wasn't actually happening. And then all of a sudden today we found out it absolutely was happening. Jay, as kind of mentioned in that press release, I think there's a lot of positive things to talk about with Jay Frye. I think that Jay's big, obviously the aero screen number one is Jay's big contribution to IndyCar over his tenure. I think that was a huge safety improvement. It's obviously already saved a lot of lives. I think Jay Frye will be remembered for that most of all. I would say that the other thing, as pointed out in the press release, is that something Jay Frye was very good at was convincing new teams to come in and buy into IndyCar, and not only just buy in for one or two races, but we've seen teams come in for full time. You think about all the way back to like 2017, 2018, 2019. Now, not all of these teams stayed around, but I think it's important to note that they got in the door, right? You think about Harding Racing, you think about Juncos, you think about Carlin. You go to McLaren buying in and being a full-time team. You think about Prema. All of these teams coming in and being a part of this have made IndyCar better. And that is totally 100% a Jay Frye thing that happened. So, yes, 100%. I think that Jay was completely right at the time. Now, obviously, I think there's been too much stagnation with it, and I think it's gotten way too long in the tooth. But I think in 2018, and really it should have been done before 2018, but I think Jay had the vision to get it done in 2018, was the look of the Universal Aero Kit. I think that was a huge crowd pleaser at the time. I think it brought more people to IndyCar because I think it evoked the look that people had been looking for from an IndyCar for a very, very long time. I think Jay Frye did a great job overseeing the technical side of things, specifically making sure that when an oval track wasn't as good, they made sure to work with Firestone, work with Dallara, work with the teams to make it better. So there's a lot of positivity from Jay Frye's time. And I don't mean to, with all the things that I'm about to say next, kind of say that he did a bad job or was a bad president of IndyCar. I don't think that at all. But I would say this. I think that Doug Boles is the right man at this right time for IndyCar. So I guess I'll start with this. I think everyone has this kind of a story about Doug. I think this is why Doug has kind of gotten to this point and has been given this responsibility in IndyCar. Everyone has a story about Doug, and I'll tell my story because it really impressed me and has continued to impress me and left a very positive impression on me. So you go back to way, way back, 2018, 2019, when I really just started doing IndyCar specific videos independently. I was still living in New Jersey, and I was coming out for the month of May to cover it as I was just, again, as an independent fan. Wasn't doing this in any kind of an official capacity. And I made some kind of a post on Twitter, and I said, hey, if you are a viewer of mine and you want to, want to meet me, Fast Friday in front of the Fernando Alonso tent. And I didn't think too much of it. And, a whole bunch of viewers showed up at that, and it was great to meet all of them. But one of the people who showed up was Doug Boles. And he introduced himself to me and said, hey, I like what you're doing. Appreciate that you're talking to the younger fans. Yeah, you're hard on us sometimes, but it's, I don't mind. And it was one of those things that really stuck with me and made me go, man, this guy is paying attention. He's got his finger on the pulse. Because I was a nobody then. I'm still a nobody, but I was really a nobody then. And the fact that Doug took the time at that point in my career to acknowledge what I was doing and kind of like not endorse it, but to say, hey, we appreciate what you're doing. That was huge. That was huge because that he was doing that way before it was cool. Way before it was cool. And so that stuck with me. And I'm not unique. I think a whole lot of people Doug has made feel that way about what they're doing in this sport. So I think that's huge. I think that's a huge step that Doug is going to make going right into this role, is that a lot of people have confidence in him because he's done the legwork to make them confident in him. Now, here's what I would worry about. And this is a big problem that Jay, I think, ran into, at least from everything that I've spoken to with folks who have knowledge of the situation, right? Jay wasn't given enough rope, so to speak, to do what needed to be done as president of IndyCar to move the sport forward. He was restricted in a lot of ways, whether that be budget, whether that be just people above him saying no, right? The success or failure of Doug Boles in this role is going to come down to whether or not Mark and Roger and the folks at Penske Entertainment above Doug say, Doug, we're behind you. You bring it to us. We're going to rubber stamp it. We're going to do it. You are driving the ship now. If Doug's driving the ship, I have a ton of confidence in what's about to happen in IndyCar. And I haven't felt that way in a long time, okay? To be 1,000% transparent about it. I have been, and you guys know this, I've been extremely pessimistic about where this sport is going. But I also feel like if you give Doug the rope, there's real potential right here to move this ship out of the iceberg. I mean, because at the end of the day, Doug is an open wheel IndyCar guy. At times, he has been a team owner, obviously being president of IMS for 10 years. His wife is Beth, who is Connor Daly's mom. Like, he's seen all aspects and sides of this sport, okay? He knows the people. He knows what makes us tick. He loves it the same way we do. And with that said, I don't think it's a huge logical leap to think there's probably 100 things that Doug would want to change. There's 100 things that I would want to change. There's probably 100 things that you would want to change, right? I think if he's given the opportunity to do even 50 of those things, I think there's a huge potential here. Here's a negative about all this, and something that, because let's be honest here, the conversations have happened behind the scenes about, IndyCar over the past 5 years, ever since the Penske takeover. And everyone's always kind of talking. I know I've talked about it, privately and sometimes publicly, is like you get the questions, or in a conversation it comes up, who would you want to, run IndyCar? Who would you kind of put in a role higher than they are right now? And every time Doug's name came up in that conversation, I say, that would be great. But I also added the caveat that Doug, as the president of IMS, has always been able to just be adored and loved, because it's so easy to be adored and loved as the president of IMS, because the pressure is huge, but more often than not, you are not going to have to put out fires. You're not going to have tremendous issues. You're not going to have people have a negative opinion of your brand. This is like a quarterback going from, the prime New England Patriots. Let's say Tom Brady's going from quarterbacking the prime New England Patriots, and he's going to go to the 0-16 Cleveland Browns. It's not quite that bad. Let's say, the 8-8 Arizona Cardinals. He's going to the Cardinals after being with the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, New England Patriots. There's a different expectation. There's a different pressure level there. And at times now, Doug's going to be the bad guy. And that's been a position that he hasn't been in as president of Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And that is the only question mark I would have about this right now is, how is that relationship and that dynamic with Doug and the fan base and the team owners and all of the stakeholders of IndyCar, now that Doug's not just a smiling face in charge of the Indianapolis 500, he's not Walt Disney just opening the gates to Disney World. There's real problems here to solve. For example, now 100%, as the article mentioned, Doug is not necessarily overseeing this, or at least micromanaging it, but Doug is ultimately going to be the one who takes the buck for the new car, the new chassis and engine formula, event in Mexico, oval tracks, marketing, all the things that people have just, beat everybody else at IndyCar over the head for. Now that buck stops with Doug. And that is a position that he hasn't been in before. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens there. I will say this, and I guess we'll finish this with a couple of positive things. The ability now with Doug, not only the president of IMS, but also the president of IndyCar, I think this is a really positive opportunity for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar to align a lot more, for IMS to be able to take some of their prowess and power and help IndyCar move forward, because now these two organizations are run by the same person, and potentially you're going to have a singular direction for these two organizations. And you might say, well, they're owned by the same company, but yes and no. A lot of times it feels like IndyCar and IMS are not on the same page about a lot of things, and I think that this is an opportunity to get them totally aligned and totally pulling in the same direction, because as I stated previously, IMS is the 900-pound gorilla, and they might be able to help IndyCar help pull them up. And I love that idea. And I think the final positive note that I have right now is that Doug Boles, nothing against Jay Frye, but this is kind of how Jay Frye was. Jay didn't do a whole lot of out front speaking with the people, speaking with the fan base, reassuring the fan base. To Jay's credit, he was very open with the media. He was very honest with the media. And his message got out through those outlets. But there was never a lot of Jay speaking to you. And I hope, because I hope, Doug, do this, please. I want to see Doug speak to the people more, because I think that's why everybody so fondly remembers, well, not everybody, but people like me so fondly remember the Randy Bernard era of IndyCar, is that he spoke to you. He understood what you wanted. And even if he couldn't make what you wanted happen, he would acknowledge it and try to explain to you why that wasn't realistic to happen. And I think that level of communication is going to be imperative for IndyCar going forward. It's something that IndyCar has lacked for years and years and years. And I think it's hurt IndyCar, because I think the fan base spirals. I think the media spirals when communication is not happening to them. I think overall this is an extremely positive day for the sport. But all of that being said, there is a long, long, long way to go. I think Doug is the right man for the job. and we're going to see where it goes. I think there is incredible upside to this, but that upside might be a long way away. But we might be getting that rock rolling down the hill starting today. We'll see. You've already probably let me know what you think in the comments, but I'm looking forward to reading anyway. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.